it's Father Vogel. We continue in our reflections on St. Francis de Sales' Introduction to the Devout Life. And we've reached Chapter 7, having looked at purification. The first purification that we have to go through is from that of sin, particularly mortal sin, but really all sin as we want to go through the devout life. But there's also a second purification, St. Francis de Sales says. He says the second purification is from the attachment to sin. And he uses a biblical story again here. He speaks of the Israelites who were enslaved in Egypt for 400 years. Not only were they slaves there, but they, in a sense, had become attached to even some of the things that they were used to there in Egypt. Said that, so we read, when they were on their way in the desert, they grumbled for some of the things they had when they're back in Egypt. I can remember the onions, the meat that we had there. At least there we had water, but now you've brought us to starve to death in the desert. And so St. Francis says that those who embark on the devout life and are trying to be purified of their sins will still feel this draw back to those sinful actions. There'll be this sadness within them, just as there was this sadness within the Israelites for having left some of those good things. They look back, in a sense, like the wife of Lot did when they were fleeing from the degradation of the city of Sodom. That is not how what we want to do. Oftentimes, this can take the form of, maybe we have a really good confession. We're feeling all clean, our soul, or maybe we've gone on a really good retreat. And so on a retreat, we felt really close to God. We're renewed in following Him. But then we get back to our ordinary, everyday life. And things go back to normal. And arise within us those same old desires for sinfulness, those same old habits that we had before. St. Francis describes it this way. He says of that person, he is in fact out of Egypt, but in desire he is still there, longing for the garlic and onions which he enjoyed eating there. He is like the woman who has put a stop to her love affairs, but still takes delight in being courted and surrounded by admirers. Alas, such persons are certainly in great danger. Yes, once we have made this firm resolve to follow the Lord, we can't, in a sense, court the evil acts that we've done previously. We can't go halfway and think, I don't just do it as much as I used to. So that means it's okay for me to lie a little bit. Or it's okay for me to, gossip a little bit. Because I'm not doing it as much as I used to. Or it's okay, maybe to look at that thing, because at least I'm not lusting in a greater way. He says, you're in grave danger if we do that. Because we're going to probably end up going back. Our heart, in a sense, is still there in Egypt. We don't want to leave any of ourselves, any of our souls back in sin. So he says that we must completely cut away from our heart every attachment connected with sin. We can't be connected at all. And of course, this is going to be a process. We're going to have to fight against those temptations. Remember, as I said, the temptation itself isn't sinful, but it does point out the fact that we're still attached, if we still are kind of attracted to it. He says, if we just let our attachments remain, he says they'll constantly weaken our spirit and make it sluggish, so that you will not be able to do good works promptly, carefully, and frequently. And of course, that's his definition of devotion. So, if we're attached to all these other things, we're not going to be able to really live true devotion. We're not going to act promptly. We're not going to be careful about what we do. We're not going to be frequent in the good works that we ought to do, because we're going to be distracted by all those other attractions. So he's calling us to, through the course of our life, remove these attachments to sinful acts, to worldly things from our life.